Today on the Keep the Change podcast, we're going to be talking about starting a business, scaling a business, and then selling a business. And I haven't done all of that. So what we've done is we've dug out two lads who have done that and are going to tell us all about it. So the Kiwi success story, I've already called this. Two lads here, Henry and Jack from Double Yoke. Good to have you boys in the studio.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah. Do you want to just start with Double Yoke and what it is that it does? And then we can go off into 1,000 tangents.
Good call.
Absolutely. So I'm happy to steer off
Lead
there.
out.
So at Double Yoke, we provide offshore staff from India and the Philippines to local companies. So local to us is predominantly in Australia and New Zealand, and now we're starting to expand pretty rapidly into the US, Europe, etc. So we work with businesses that are growing, and we provide dedicated resourcing. So traditionally, we've had a largely an IT focus. Through this acquisition, we've partnered with a brilliant company, which we'll talk about more, outsourced, so we're actually expanding to a wide range of other roles. But our goal is to help people companies get the resourcing they need to scale.
Yeah, nice one. So when did this start?
Cool.
Jack kicked off in 2018. Actually, you probably best lead out, man. You're the...
No worries. So yes, it sort of started, I was working at Lion Breweries, so just around the corner. And in 2018, I kind of finished my job on a Friday and went to India on the Sunday to sort of set up initially what was a pretty basic like website building company. So we'd put sites together for people, mostly aunties, uncles, and friends to start with. That kind of evolved into more complicated, larger software apps. The team kind of grew. So we started, doing cloud-based and native applications for local businesses. And then we kind of organically got onto a bit of this model around resourcing. It was a little bit sort of demand-led in that a couple of our customers that we'd built apps for were like, hey, can we just keep JS in our team? Well, can we have most of them? We're like, well, we hadn't really thought about that, but sure, if they're useful, and it's working well, then they can join your team, and we'll still hire them in India, but we'll provide the back office support they need, but they'll become an integrated part of your team. And a couple of months kind of went by, and it was going great. So the customers were going, hey, these guys are fully integrating our team. It's working well. Can we have someone else? So I thought, oh shit, maybe there's something here. So the timing was really good, and this was kind of 18 months or so into the business, and a mutual friend of ours. A guy called Mike sort of said, hey, chat to Henry. He's kind of looking for something new. So had a chat to Hen, and I'll hand over to you here. But basically, Hen, I sort of explained to him what I was seeing and thought, man, there might be something here. And he just got it like no one else. So yeah.
It was game on, eh?
Yeah, boys knew each other at that stage?
Only through really of each other. We both studied in Dunedin.
Lots of mutuals.
Yeah. Dunedin, okay, we'll park that.
Yeah. It's part 3. But so, mutual mate of mine was, said you should go up and meet this guy, Jack. He's kind of just kicking along with Double Yoke, and it's growing, I think, pretty quickly, and he's kind of got this new idea for where he can take it. My background was I worked, various different industries, various different roles, but one of them was working for quite an early stage fintech startup, and I was employee 4 or 5, so super new. We kind of grew the team over a couple of years working there, landed, quite a lot of clients in Australasia. So that was awesome. But one of the things that we realized, and this was back in 2016, that tech talent was just in such high demand. And even the banks, Xero at the time, obviously the big employer of tech people in New Zealand and things, we just weren't able as this earlier stage or even mid-size, fintech, to be able to kind of compete with those salaries locally. And so when Jack was look, we're doing offshore software development kind of project based, but I think that there could be something into hiring a bit more long term. I was like, man, if we can create a lateral move for tech companies to basically, source IT staff offshore. And this is around when, COVID and remote working was becoming a thing. It was I reckon there's something to this. So we jumped on, and then
the rest is history.
The rest is history a little bit, yeah.
We'll get to some of that history. So just to bring the listeners up to speed if they don't understand. So basically, from what I understand, you've got a business here in New Zealand. You got customers who are saying, hey, we need tech and development type support. They can't access the resource here in New Zealand because we just don't have that level and scale. you guys have then found people around the world who do have those skills and can be the person to join them up between the New Zealand person seeking to have the project done, and then the person who can provide the resource, so the employee effectively, and then they're that good that then the client or customer is basically saying, hey, can we keep them? They're amazing. And so that's where it's at that stage.
And that is exactly right. And from there, that's where we sort of made that decision. So at that stage, websites were still kind of 80% of our business, and this dedicated part was 20, maybe even less. Maybe it was 90-10, but it just was clear that it was such a more scalable model that we actually made the bold decision. Hey, let's turn off 90% of our revenue and focus on the 10, and let's go all in on this. So now we're all in on dedicated resources, and have been for a couple of years. So through that, over the last 3 years, we've been able to more than 10x our company.
And the nuance there between those kind of two models, which I think is obviously pretty easy to understand for us, but is where clients would typically pay us for an outcome previously. So they would say, hey, look, I want a mobile app with these sorts of screens, etc. We would scope up the job. We would create like a fixed price quote for them. We would manage the delivery, the deployment, the hosting, etc. Where the hiring came in was more around, hey, look, we're not after an outcome. We're after people with this skill set. And so we'd go find them. And then, it became quite valuable to clients as well, because we were able to hire as kind of the employer of record in the local country and manage, HR, payroll, taxation, legalities of hiring in that country. And then we'll just rent them out to our clients onshore via just like a New Zealand to New Zealand contract. So they didn't have to stuff around too much with, that sort of like international hiring law.
Awesome. And so I suppose New Zealand-based businesses and Australian, etc., then could solve their problems faster because they've now got access to the talent a lot faster.
And it's common use cases. Hey, we've just landed a big client. We've got 3 or 4 massive features, which is going to take 2 years to build. We need to double our team size, and we can't find the talent locally fast enough. It's probably there. It just takes 6 to 8 months with us, maybe a couple of weeks.
Did either of you see yourself doing this in your life maybe 10 years ago?
Not really. Nah, we didn't. Neither of us, even from a tech background. So, so we had to learn. We had to learn pretty fast. There was we're laughing about it this morning as we're doing a little bit of prep for this, but we're thinking back to times where we'd be coming out of meetings with CTOs and just Googling stuff on the way back in the Uber back to work before we sent the prezzo back, so it was definitely fast learning.
There was a few ones where we were like, I'd have the laptop up in the meeting pretending to take notes, but it's just like Googling different technologies and stuff.
And there was no GTP back then. Everything's slow.
Wow. So I read in 2019 that someone brought a stake in the business. Is that right?
That was right.
So pretty early on.
So we got an early vote of confidence. That was actually a customer. So that was really cool. They were like, shit, you guys are doing something well. We just did a website for them. They bought just a small share, but it was still a nice vote of confidence, and sort of rode that through with us until recently. So really neat.
And it said in the article that I read that the business then effectively is valued at about $2.3 million. So we got off to a decent start. So for those people who don't understand, they take a share in the business and then give you capital for that, or basically like they pay, just like buying a house, for instance. They go, right, we want a percentage of this. Here's the money, and now we own a percentage of it. They want dividends in the future.
That's exactly right. And so businesses like cash at any stage of business is super important. So we're Henry and I are big believers that there's that idea that the one thing that all businesses that do fail have in common is they run out of cash. There's no other way. So there's sort of two primary ways that you can obviously get money, and one's equity and the other's debt, and so debt was a little out of the question for us, just because the banks probably wouldn't, it's pretty risky business, a couple of guys making websites. So equity was the obvious option, which is just like you say, someone gives you some money, gets a share in the company and holds that.
Yeah, nice. Okay, well, we're going to get into some key lessons that you've learned through this journey, but before we do, let's just fast forward to effectively 2023. I think you're on the Deloitte Fast 50. So that is the 50 fastest growing businesses in New Zealand. And you've got to be growing at pretty decent speed, and your revenue has to be increasing. So I think by then you would have been roughly at about 5 million in turnover. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, spot on.
And then where do we go from there through to then eventually the sale that's been in the media? There's 64,000 articles. Your boys are famous everywhere.
Good. And it was a pretty exciting sort of process. But we got approached not long after that, actually, from a gentleman called Mike Larcher over in Aussie, and he owns a company called Outsourced. So they do a similar model to us. They have a much wider offering. So we were really focused on tech, but they were focused on a number of roles, BPO, accounting, admin, etc.
Yeah.
And we're strongly focused in the Philippines. So our tilt was kind of more towards India. And so he kind of tapped us and said, hey, I like what you guys are doing. Be pretty keen to see if we can join forces here. So he sort of got that underway, and then went through just a fascinating process of it was, first time, but it was a lot of fun, and it's all hands on deck. So once you get your kind of your HOA or your heads of agreement sort of on, then you've sort of everyone's hitting the clock to try and get through it. So that was a lot of fun, but that kind of probably took a few months, and then managed to get everything tidied up, get to a good spot, and then they acquired us. So and they're just like, you credit to them. I mean, one of the big drivers for us was they were kind of 5 or 10 years ahead of us, and just operationally and strategically really good aligned, but just like Mike was just a good bugger. We're like, this he had really good similar goals and value stuff. So we're like, this can work.
Yeah.
So you sold 100% of the business, or?
Yeah, the way it kind of works is, and all deals are structured differently. But ours was where they acquire 100%, so they buy your business outright, but then you can roll an agreed percentage. So we went, we worked with them to go, what's the amount that we want to roll in? But then so we took some of ours out in what you call cash consideration.
Yeah.
So you take some of your shares out in cash, which is nice. But then you leave a chunk of it in to get rolled into the holding company that now owns Yoke, but also owns Outsourced and will soon own other businesses. So we kept a fair bit of skin in the game because we believe in what they're doing.
Yeah. So you're a shareholder in that business in the next chapter.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But you've been able to cash out some coin as well, tax-free capital gains.
Yeah. So it's not all bad.
Well done,
while it
lads.
lasts.
Thanks. Yeah. Getting in the Kiwi Saver fund that suits you and your situation is key to making sure you're maximising your investment. Generate are an award-winning Kiwi Saver provider with a track record of long-term performance, and they can help you do exactly this. Their advisors can meet with you to talk about all your options when it comes to KiwiSaver to help you decide what's best for you. Too many people never get KiwiSaver advice, but not you. Go to generatekiwisaver.co.nz/change to book a no obligation chat with a Generate advisor. A copy of the product disclosure statement is available at generatekiwisaver.co.nz. The issuer of the scheme is Generate Investment Management Limited, and of course, past performance does not guarantee future returns. And realistically, this is like a 6 or 7 year story. Would that be right?
About that, yeah. It doesn't feel like it.
About 6.
Feels faster, but it has. It's gone
by
by
like a blink of an eye. Yeah.
3 years of COVID. Or
That's right.
So, like, is it life changing selling a business? I don't know what it sold for. You don't have to tell us, obviously, but I read somewhere it was a number of millions.
Yeah, it's definitely life changing.
Yeah,
I can't speak for myself, but
No, similar.
And we should be able to fucking celebrate that, right? And be like, wicked. It's doable. Like, how good is that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of part of the reason as well why we're so excited to be able to come on here is we're big believers in Kiwis and the importance of sort of that entrepreneurial flair to help us grow as a nation, and that you don't have to be. I think we're good examples of how unremarkable you can be. Henry's a bit smarter than me, but I think it's really it's just this, and we'll talk about some of the learnings we've learned along the way. But really, it's quite achievable. With a few steps.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, like, just to add on to Jack's points, which I agree. Like, I think it is quite good to celebrate that success. But even like, when I kind of first started my career, when I actually first started at fintech, the CEO of that company at the time, a guy called Carlos, one of the more headstrong, smartest guys I've ever met. He was like, man, just read this book. It was Paul Callahan's Get Off the Grass and Wool to Weather. And it was basically just like, his thesis on New Zealand, where like the economy strengths are, et cetera. And it was kind of a really, really interesting read because, basically his thesis is there's these companies from wool to weather, which is, wool companies, weather, workshop, Fisher and Paykel healthcare, like, and what he was saying is like, we're not going to be a bums on seats. We've got a small population, not a huge amount of like natural resources to draw on, but one of the things that we are is like quite clever and curious, and we get into like really interesting niches and create value both domestically but also internationally, and that's like should help fuel our exports. And so I think just like from our side, like I didn't realize that I was kind of going to get into offshore resourcing for tech or anything like that, but remaining curious and working along somebody like Jack was like, it was a great little couple of years there.
Brilliant. And I'd imagine the people who brought 15% of the business back in 2019, they'd be pretty
they-
stoked too.
We've got
They did
two
it right
thumbs
as
up.
well.
Yeah, two thumbs up.
So,
Yeah.
and in a weird way as well, it's kind of, Henry and I have talked about it, but with all the stuff, it's a bit of a mirage. The things do every time you get there, there's something else chasing. So now it feels like the work's starting. Like we're on a crash course. We managed to get to a certain level, but just joining with outsourcing, just seeing how they operate, like how slick Mike is, and so we're really feels like we're just sort of starting our degree again, and and there's still some exciting stuff ahead, so we're pretty pumped about that.
Yeah, it's like an apprenticeship. Jack and I kind of like it's going to be great. We're going to be like in with this company that, and one of the reasons we like them is they had a lot of core values around like employee treatment and things like that, which we learned from our customers was like the most important thing when offshoring is like how do you treat your staff, how do you retain good talent and stuff, and these guys are like world class in that space. So it's going to be so exciting for the next 2 or 3 years. Being like, we thought we knew a lot, and now we realize we're just at the tip of the iceberg. Yeah.
Do you deal, or have you dealt with any of that sort of, oh, well, what do you mean? Like you're employing people overseas. Oh, do you pay them anything? And surely you must get some of that.
Initially, in the early days, there was a lot more of that. I think offshoring, especially when Jack and I first started talking, there wasn't a huge amount of awareness in New Zealand specifically. And so, to Jack's credit, like, he was a bit of an early mover in the space. And I think it really helped having local touchstones, like, both Jack and I in Auckland being able to eyeball a client and kind of talk through employee structures and, what they're getting paid and kind of, be transparent with our margins and our markups and things like that. And I think that was like really important, but we've always been pretty bullish on like paying an honest wage, for good workers. And
and it's kind of globally, like you look after your staff, and that's because one of our biggest methods for recruitment is referral. So you look after your staff. They tell their friends come work for Yoke. So it's relatively basic, but it makes a huge difference. And the global workforce is competitive now. So if you're not looking after the right guys and treating them well, they're off to quick. Microsoft, they're off to PayPal. So it's definitely a necessity, but it's great.
Yeah.
Well, you lads, I told you before we started, but probably the most prepared guest I've had on a podcast, and you've basically told me, hey, here's what we're going to talk about on this pod. So I'll keep us moving. Have we covered the intro and the story of Yoke?
So we're probably rabbiting on a bit.
No, it's good. I think, for the people listening, you guys didn't necessarily want to come on here and do like a let's get into the story of Yoke for a whole hour. It's basically you want to get into some lessons and then be able to give back and give people some ideas about what they could be doing potentially if they're interested to completely change the trajectory of their life and things like that.
Good call.
So let's get into some lessons then from the start, scale, and sale of Yoke. Kick us off with number one.
Awesome. You want
me to lead out?
Yeah,
sweet. I think one of the biggest learnings that we've taken to kick things off is like, don't let the idea get in the way.
Yeah,
I think that's like a really, really important lesson. A lot of people obsess over this idea that, well, that's it. They obsess over the idea and that, it has to be new and completely unregistered, but an untapped, huge opportunity, minimized on risk. Like it's just going to be so immediately obvious and apparent. But one of the things that you kind of realize is like, even if you start a business, you've got a huge critical mass of learnings and mistakes to make along the way. And that your business does transform over time. Yeah. And that, action and volume, I think of, just learnings and insights negates against luck. So anything you do?
No, I think that's spot on. And the, like an analogy or metaphor I've used in the past, which I think is spot on. It's definitely been our experiences. In many ways, like the idea is just your ticket to the theme park. You just need a ticket. Once you're in, no one's checking your ticket. You go around, it changes. Like your business in 3 years, to Henry's point, it's not going to look anything like it. I'm sure this might be similar for some of your journeys, Luke. Things evolve, things change, but sometimes you just need to get in the door.
Yeah.
So don't get obsessed. And often people will feel like, I really want to do something, but I just don't have the right idea. And then you might talk to that friend a year later, and often, unfortunately, the idea still doesn't come because people are looking for that silver bullet, but it doesn't need to be. There's plenty of things that you can do, even if the key is starting.
Yeah.
So pick anything.
And as well, probably too, that I've got friends that are, maybe wanting to try and start their own thing, on the side or go in something full time when it comes to like starting and growing their own business. And they're like, oh, but, there's already people out there solving that problem.
They Google it. Someone's doing it.
And it's like there's not only just one clothing company or one IT startup firm or one recruitment company or one law firm, you can add value in your own ways, and I think even for any novel ideas, I think if you've got 3 people in your network that don't know of the idea or the thing itself, like it's not an omnipresent idea. Like you can add value and find, ways to create your own thing on the side,
Yeah, well, I've managed to build out an accounting practice.
Yeah.
And honestly, like every time we get a new client, you have to write to the current accountant, and I think, who's it going to be? I'm like, I never heard of them. And I'm like, how many accountants are there? And what the hell?
Quite a lot.
And we had some fun as well on this one. Is so one thing that is we talk about a lot, even with WO, because ideas don't just start. You have ideas the whole way through, and we talk about this idea that not only is no idea a good idea, no idea is a bad idea, also no idea is a good idea. Like you don't know
100%.
How good an idea is until you actually test it. So we try to take that kind of scientific approach, but for a bit of fun, like what we've sort of identified is that as often we're not good judges. It's very hard to judge whether an idea is good. So you'll tell your auntie what you're thinking about doing, or you tell your friend at the pub, and almost always they'll say, I don't know about that. And so we've picked a couple here that are ideas that are so the first one, for example, and you can imagine, Luke, if I caught up with you for a beer and said, hey, I'm thinking about making this system that, every square meter on Earth is going to have 3 words. So where you're sitting is orange, octopus, marshmallow, and where we are here is car, green, house. What do you think? Will that work? And of course, what you're going to say is, no, this is GPS.
Yeah.
Like, don't do it. It's a mad idea. And you're perfectly right to do that. But then you look at, there's a company, so they're called, 3 words, UK company, it's a unicorn. Yeah. It's a unicorn, it's a huge multi-million-dollar company. And similar, we had a couple more, like chicken rental system. Like if you imagine telling your parents, hey, I'm going to do a chicken rental system for people that live in the city. And they say, why, what do you mean? So people can have eggs. Well, they get it as a supermarket, perfectly valid arguments.
Yeah.
But again, at a surface level, the idea sometimes feels silly. That's called Rent the Chicken. It's by Phil and Jen. That's a huge unicorn company in the US. But what it highlights is that it's actually about execution.
Yeah. All ideas can be so easily contested if they're just that.
If they're just that, but anything that's executed well, there's a really, really wide range. An idea has to be particularly bad not to work if it's executed well. Yeah. So with the right execution, I think the important thing is don't get obsessed with that idea. If you execute it well, it'll work.
Yeah. So you lads have got 10 ideas that you'd like to give people. Were those?
No. That's
different. We'll keep those to the end. You're going to stick around to the end. You're going to give away the ideas. Okay. So number 1, pick an idea, pick any idea and get started. And I think as well, like that's where it's okay to fail and realize, this doesn't work, but I learnt these 3 things. Now take that over to the next idea.
Yeah.
That's right.
I actually think like I don't know what the stat is, but it would be a staggering statistic that I reckon if you started your own thing and just ran at it for 6 months, you'd be ahead of 95% of the population.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're already in.
You'd be the 1% for actually doing it.
Yeah, the minorities. But just by having an idea and going, actually, you know what? Like on a Saturday and a Sunday, I'm just going to dedicate 8 hours for the next three months. 4 hours each day. I'm just going to see if I can get this started. Without even trying to leave your job and go all in.
Yeah. The guy at Shopify had, and we've used it. Henry and I, we sort of adopted in the business, but it's a guy, I think Toby Luke's his name, and he has this saying, which is a successful discovery of something that didn't work. So he banned the word failure at the office. Okay? So they had a big wall that was called the successful discoveries of things that didn't work, which is synonymous for failure, but it's a complete reframing. The point you made is right, because what he was highlighting to the staff is this really important idea that failing is actually good, because then something doesn't work, which means you've got a higher probability the next thing you do will work. Nice. So we've stuffed up, like our list of failures and things we've tried in double yoke, it wouldn't be enough to fit on all these pages here, but for each one you do, you get that little bit of extra insight that your competition then has to go through that learning curve, so you're ahead.
Yeah.
So the failures are important.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's an interesting one. So you go.
Yeah, just thinking about a venture that we had a crack at that didn't really work, and then saw someone come along and they were going to, we tried to do it with manpower. They were like, no, we're going to build a tech solution with this.
Yep.
Yeah. I kind of thought, maybe they will get it to work. And the more I thought about it, I thought, well, no, because we still just couldn't even get the penetration through the market. They didn't care enough. And so watched their journey over a few years, and eventually, I think we actually tried to say them from the start, we've kind of tried, honestly, don't waste too much of your life.
Yeah.
But they still, wanted to go through it all. And there was, they were raising money and we're thinking, wow, like no one was giving us money. They're thinking like, shit, maybe we had it wrong and they are going to crush this.
Yeah.
But eventually everyone's money evaporated and, and we kind of think, we probably spent 20 grand to figure that out and got it wrong. They probably spent 200,000. Probably spent 2 million. I don't know. But,
that's almost like you've sort of almost perfectly segued through to our second. I'm looking at my notes here now, and our second key learning is almost exactly that. So you might better load that
get
off.
Straight in. So number 2, start small, tiny small. What does that mean?
Yeah, and so this is one that I think we're both massive believers in, and this is what we encourage. So for the first 3 or 4 years, as you mentioned, or first couple of years at least, we were working with people that were starting ideas. So we were building platforms for ticketing systems, platforms for connecting bars with musicians, so all sorts of platforms. But so a common thing was we're working with people that that had ideas, and the key thing we noticed, the people that did well were the people that were prepared to start small. So reduce the scope. And it's really tempting as you start to brainstorm and start to whiteboard about these ideas. Oh, we could do this, we could do that. And you end up with this massive business that's going to take you 10 years. And then, like you say, by the time you spend $2 million and you learn. Whereas it's actually, a really good mental model is to think, well, what's the minimum viable product we can do? What's the minimum thing we can do? And there's this like beautiful story that we reference quite a lot, but there's a company in India called Dunzo, and they basically, it's like Uber Eats, but they bring you anything. So when I'm in India, you need an HDMI cable, you forgot it, boom, put on Dunzo, it's arrived. But they started just with a WhatsApp. It was a WhatsApp number. So it's literally one of the biggest companies in India now. But they started, I think, in Mumbai around there, with a WhatsApp. So people would just send them WhatsApp. They didn't go and build a $10,000 platform. They didn't go and advertise. They just had a WhatsApp and people say, hey, can you bring me some, probably not milk, but whatever it was. Yeah, cool. I'll come down. And then next would be, I'll send the driver. Then next would be, okay, cool, I'll allocate one of the drivers. But it was, the first 12 months, they just used a WhatsApp number. Now they've got a huge app, but it doesn't need to start there.
Why do you think we make this stuff so complicated and we do go to the other end and it's got to be apps and it's got to be the perfect website and I'm going to get the copywriter to do it for me?
Spot on.
I think it's an interesting one. I think it's because it's really tangible, and it's kind of something that you can almost showcase. It's almost like maybe a little bit of, it's always like the logo, the website, the mobile app. Like those are the kind of, because they're sexy, they're so fun and they're awesome and they involve design and, like a whole bunch of collaboration. And I think like, sometimes you can kind of go through that process and forget about the actual end value you're trying to give and realize that the third or fourth bolt-on feature actually doesn't, necessarily affect that customer journey. I think naturally it's a tendency because it's a bit more tangible, those kind of more, front-end user-facing
So then you feel like you're making progress because you've got them. You've got my business cards now. My website's nearly finished.
That's right. You've got my business card, exactly as you say. Got my logo done. It's like, fantastic.
That's great.
It's awesome.
Why'd you do that?
I was thinking about this in the gym this morning about doing a LinkedIn post, and I was like, I'm just going to wind people up. I was thinking like 3 things that stop a business doing well. 1, obsessing over the perfect website copy.
Spot on.
2, getting a business card and spending heaps of time getting that perfected as well.
Yeah,
and then
we still have business cards.
And then 3, going to B&I meetups, which I know that would be highly offensive to people who go to B&I. But thinking being, I get to see the books of a lot of successful businesses and they barely ever reference, I picked up that client at B&I. I got that one with they came through the website. We gave them a business card and then they brought over an NZX listed account. Like those stories don't really exist too much. There might be some outliers, but I think we try and, like you're saying before, mate, we try and do some of those things so that we have got a feeling of, okay, I've got some progress with what I'm doing. But the business card, the website, and even going to the B&I, if you're not talking to your customer and telling them what problem you can solve for them, then you're still wasting time.
I think as well, like people probably do quite like the story of their business as opposed to the actual value of their business, maybe at least early on. Because as you say, like those tangible things like a website or a mobile app is like, hey, look what I'm doing, look at my thing. Whereas actually the harder thing, because it involves a risk of failure, is like talking to those 10 clients, talking to those 10 clients that may not have necessarily got in touch with you and, shouting at you because things are wrong, but maybe they're just not the ones that reach out at all because you kind of know that maybe you haven't kind of done enough work in that space and you don't really want to address the horse in the room or the elephant in the room because that's might be uncomfortable and something might be raised, And I think that was actually one thing that we nurtured in pretty early on. Actually, to Jack's credit, like early on, Jack was like we go phone first. Whenever there's an email that comes through that's like slightly problematic, we like pick up the phone, ring them first.
Nice.
And the other one was that you kind of just like did a really good job of socializing failure pretty early on without like, growing team. It was more like, we've got a meeting. It's probably gonna be terrible. Probably get our ass handed to us, and then we'll come out.
Red face meetings, we used to call them.
Red face meetings. Yeah, we're sitting there red in the face.
The redder you come out of the face, the more you're going to learn from the call.
Yeah, nice.
And some of them were red.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's kind of managed to permeate through, and definitely like part of that sort of fear of failure, I think, is all trying to overcome that. Is like, even if you are a bit scared, just be scared and do it anyway.
Yeah, and I think as well, like one thing I've found really, really useful, especially around that failure, because I think that is what people worry about, right? And it's human nature. We hate failing. There are kind of two key levers that the main one really was if you can work out what you're prepared to fail. Okay, so work out what you're prepared to lose. And that can be quite kind of freeing, because you can go, okay, cool. I'm prepared. I'm going to put aside $3,000 into a different account. Okay, so I'm not going to use up all my savings. I'm going to put $3,000 into this account, and I'm going to commit 3 Saturdays, and 6 months. And then you can say, well, look, once that money's gone, those Saturdays are gone, and the 6 months is over. If it hasn't worked, it hasn't worked. I'm out. That's fine. But if you can just compartmentalize it, because then you can step back and go, if I lose $2,000, will it matter?
Yeah.
Nah. Okay, cool. Can I give up 2 Saturdays? Yeah, well, I haven't got anything on next weekend. Well, the one after.
Yeah.
And then you can go, well, actually, maybe this isn't quite so bad, because I'm not going to lose everything. I'm not going to lose the house. I'm not going to lose my wife. It's just work out what you're prepared to lose and put that, and then just be somewhat rigid on it, because you might find that actually, shit, this works.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you've got a bigger set of problems.
And the problems don't go.
Exactly.
Problems get bigger.
So number 2 is start small, tiny, small.
Yep.
Just what we're talking about there with the like getting it right for the customer as well is one of the lessons that I got that really stuck with me in the accounting space was there should be more information on your accounting page for your client than there is about yourself. And basically it's so cliche and easy to go to a website these days, and then you go to the About Us, and there's like screeds of I like running and I've got 2 dogs and all this shit.
Yeah.
Someone said to me, mate, I do not give a fuck about that. I want to know, can you do my accounts well? Can you ensure we don't have tax surprises, blah, blah, blah. So why does your website have so much about you and what you're doing? Why isn't it about me? And when they sort of explain it to me like that, I thought, man, that's such a good wake up call, and then realize that we default the other way and go, right, we need to make all this about us. But business isn't about us, it's about the other person, right?
Yeah,
exactly. And it actually, like, just riffing on that, but like, between you and I, we've probably spoken to about 3, especially in the earlier days when we were doing websites and mobile apps. Like Jack and I may have spoken to maybe 300, 400 people that had a business idea around an MVP, which is a minimum viable product, which is kind of like the idea is it's a minimum feature set for your software product. Try to get it down to minimum amount of screens just to get from A to B. What's that critical path?
Yeah.
And it was so interesting. One of the biggest challenges we had was just being like fully honest and transparent with the guy who's trying to, or the girl who's trying to build the app, and just go, look, strip features out. So, can we add this? Can we add this? Can we add this feature? What about like a this, that, and the next thing? Can they see these analytics and these reports? Can we send that to them in an email? It's just like, just strip it all back, because everything of these has an estimated or like a real cost, to build and to develop, and actually,
and you deprive yourself learning what the customers tell you what they actually want.
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
The guy, the Reid Hoffman, the LinkedIn guy, had a really nice quote, and he says, if you're not embarrassed by your first release, you've gone way too far.
Yeah.
So and that doesn't just apply to apps. If you're not really embarrassed about the first version of your business, you've like your 6 months word down the track. Just get something out and let people tell you.
Yeah.
Let them tell you what they want.
Yeah. I think it's the same for putting out content and social and stuff. Sometimes I'm like, oh wow, was that the first image?
Oh, if you went back to your first podcast, I'm sure you are.
Yeah.
But it's kind of that volume negates luck, right? Like if you're like, man, I just want to get into content, like the best thing you can do is not angst too much over what goes out. That kind of fear of failure switch. You might win the battle, but you lose the war if you're not posting twice a week for 6 months. To get that critical mass of followers up, and it's that kind of regularity, consistent. It's almost a little bit like going to the gym. Like if you're watching what you eat, go to the gym for 30 minutes a day. Like probably going to end up in shape. You know, you won't see it on day
Hasn't
one or
worked for me, but-
day 3, but
It's the beers afterwards, maybe. Yeah. But it goes back to what you were talking about before as well, execution, right? And actually
Execution.
executing something and going, okay, now you're on the path, so then you are going to post. And like, I think I like to think that I role model that with Keep the Change in a lot of the things that I do, where I know that like I'm not an aesthetic person, so my Instagram is not going to look amazing, but some of the best content I've done is literally me just saving down a reel where I've just had a random idea and I speak to the camera, didn't perfect it, and then I post it. It's like 50,000 views and think, fuck, the things that I tried really hard to make look good and sound good, and I took 16 goes to record that one, 8,000 views.
I love your content because it feels so authentic and unpublished, or like not unpublished, unpolished, which is not really
in the nicest way.
In the nicest way.
Honestly, I'm good with it.
But I think it's great. Like there's that Sam Sulik guy who's kind of been blowing up on TikTok, and he's got this like millions and millions of followers, and like he just walks around. He doesn't have any sort of like, you know, there's no production value to what he does. It's just him and a camera. Just kind of looks like, you know, you're sitting next to him at the gym kind of, and he's just chatting to you, and he's just like going crazy. Like I think people kind of want that authenticity maybe. I don't know.
I definitely think you're right, mate. And I think part of it is that like I've been doing content for a while now, you see the phases, and basically we go through the real sexy, who's got the best looking content and the great colors and the filters and stuff. And then people get bored of that and go, oh, like that's not even what you look like. That's weird. I saw them in person. And so then we go back into an authenticity piece. And I think that's where back in there. And also people are looking at things going, oh, is that made by AI?
That's a good point, actually.
So I think we're back into an authenticity wave. So that's where like I know that I'm like, okay, this is my area to shine, because when it goes back to perfection, I can't compete, man. I get fucking blasted.
But
it just means that the longer you keep executing, that there will be these phases, and if you can remember that there are cycles and phases, that you get your chance to win, but you don't if you don't carry on, and if you don't execute, and if you don't do stuff.
Just out of interest, when you first kickstarted, you know, your content production, you know, efforts, like, did it kind of take you down the path that you thought, or has it changed and morphed and you've kind of done different stuff now, or like, you know, you're in a different place where you thought you would be before you jumped into it?
So there's a couple of ways my brain like wants to answer that. So firstly, like with Keep the Change, I could see, because I got strategic. So middle of COVID, and I'm thinking, okay, people are asking for help around this stuff. And then I'd learnt about, if you solve bigger problems, then eventually you get rewarded more. Now I could keep doing business content and try and nail that and be that guy. And then I thought, well, actually, everyday finance is a bigger problem than business finance. Why don't I try solve that, and then stuff will shake out on the business side?
Yeah, gotcha.
So that meant that I had to get a bit more vulnerable and, you know, be a bit more like relatable instead of, you know,
and controversial at times.
It's
touchier subjects.
But it allowed me to get out of the, okay, I've got to be how a CA is supposed to talk and act and whatnot, and be like, an everyday person's not going to relate to that if you're trying to do it like that. So anyway, I said to Mikey the other day, I was doing a bit of a tally up at some of the work that we've won this year, and over 2/3 of the new work that I've brought on to Next Advisory this year has come out of Keep the Change.
Well done.
Wow.
Yeah, but that's
impressive.
This is year 5.
So it's not overnight.
2020, I see the strategy, I start implementing it, and then you start to see the fruits from it. But what it's also meant is then I've learned a lot around stats of how people are doing, and then I get consumer feedback as such. Then I can go over to Next Advisory in the business space and be like, hey, this is what I'm hearing over here. You need to start thinking about this, because you're a business owner and your blinkers are over here.
Wow, but so you can kind of get to consumer and business.
And so that's been quite powerful. So then all that it ends up doing is everywhere I'm walking around, I see that stat or whatever, and I think like, oh, that's a piece of content. That's a piece of content. And so then it's just meant that my volume has just gone berserk. And I've lent further into that of, you know, like I'll speak to some people and their content will go really well, and they'll say, no, you're posting too much. And I think, well, I don't know, like if I'm posting too much until, because the day that I'm not going to post, that's the piece of content that works really well. So I've just lent into, well, like, who cares if I am? The algorithm will make sure people don't see it. I'll just do what my rhythm is.
That's a good point. If you put out a bad post, the algorithm will take care of that.
It's 72 hours later, it's gone. But also then you realize like, oh, that post didn't hit. But 6 months later, it might make sense to people now. Go back, copy, paste, post again. blows
call.
up. And you
Gotcha.
realize, content's actually an asset. So
Yeah, cool.
they're probably not the answer you might have thought. But
No,
it makes
it's just
sense.
real interesting. It's not a space I know that much about.
beat the power game with PowerShop. If you want to get ahead with your money, you need to get ahead with your bills. Back in the day, I used to get a little thrill when a power bill would arrive in the mail and show that I was in credit. The thrill of being ahead of your bills is a feeling money can't buy. PowerShop is in the business of delivering that feeling. They do things differently, giving you the insight and control over your bill to stay ahead. With PowerShop, you can see what you're using and purchase power packs, which are discounted packs of power, ahead of time. This enables you to plan ahead and pay for power when it suits you. All in all, being with PowerShop means you're informed and empowered to take control of your power bill. So, what are you waiting for? Take charge of your dollars, kilowatts, and cents by switching to PowerShop. As a bonus, you can choose between a $150 credit or free weekends when you sign up. To see how much you could save, visit powershop.co.nz and get a savings estimate simply by uploading a recent electricity bill. But what we are going to do as a part two is we're going to get into some of the business ideas that you guys have for other people, and we'll come to those. But let's carry on with our 5 key lessons to finish off episode 1. So number 3, focus as soon as you can. I love this one.
Yep. You want to have a swing at that one, Hen?
Yeah.
And saying no as well, right?
Yeah, yep. Focus until you can say no or have the luxury to say no. But broadly speaking, like Alex Hormozy, I don't know if you watch much of his content. He's a bit of a demon. He calls it kind of like a woman in the red dress. And to explain it basically is you kind of want to focus your business on getting your first critical mass of customers. And sometimes you do have to sort of show a bit of leg and kind of work, some magic to make that happen and say yes to a few things that, maybe a little bit outside of your core. But broadly speaking, what we find is, or what we have found even in double Yoke, is by trying to do too many things at once, as far as things to drive the economic engine, is you start to kind of suffer from, not so much from starvation of customers, more of indigestion, just trying to be this to this customer, another thing to another customer, try and tackle different verticals all at the same time. And it's kind of like, where you can, I think there's a really good book called Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore that basically talks about the idea that when you're kind of first and starting growing a business, the idea is you want to try really hard to get from early adopters as kind of your first set of customers, and then pick a niche and just become the undisputed market leader of that niche. And, even for our business, like we had to have some pretty serious conversations about whether we were going to keep, doing websites and mobile apps as well as this dedicated resourcing, because it was 90% of our business. And Jack basically was like, all right, let's turn off 90% of our business and go all in on this dedicated resourcing. And weirdly, that's what catapulted us, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think like what Henry and I have noticed as well is that it gets harder. Like as you get a bit more scale, there's more, there's to use your analogy, there's more women in red dresses, there's more things that could add a few bucks to the bottom line. Yeah. But there's a cost to everything, So being focused has been enormously valuable for us.
Any frameworks around how to say no and what to focus on?
Yeah, I think like first of all, it's understanding what's driving value in your business. So getting clear about that. So whether you're starting or whether you've already got a company, I think getting really clear about, and a good sort of specific metric to use is like, lifetime gross profit. So where are the areas in our business that we're getting good gross profit over an extended period of time? Because those are going to be the ones that pay your bills, but often it allows you to be more scalable. So if you can pick, it's a lot easier to do 1 or 2 things really well than to do half a dozen things averagely. So I think getting really clear about what is that area of your business that's really driving value for your customers.
Yeah. Not so much a framework, but definitely one of the tactics that we learned when we shifted away from things like doing fixed price project builds and more into staffing is we just got really chummy with a bunch of people that still did that stuff, and then you'd kind of be able to kind of not necessarily help the customer, but still remain helpful by giving them a solid option to go and explore further and elsewhere. And so that also helped us kind of just grow our network as well, because then people were like, oh, well, if you're not doing that, you're no longer a competitor. We don't do staffing, we'll send you guys referrals as well. So that was kind of quite a good one for us. But the overall, I guess the overall sentiment for this one is very much keep focus on the thing that drives your economic engine in the business and try not do too much more than that and convince yourself that you can.
And better before, I think one we use a lot at Hen is like this idea of better before new, and that's been really powerful for us. Is as soon as you're discussing, because you're often whiteboarding, and where there's one option to do something better versus another option to do something new, go with the better option.
Yeah,
it's a hell of a lot easier to do. To do something that you're already doing. You've already got a path. You're just widening the path.
And it's a bit tricky. It's kind of shiny object
it's
syndrome.
Fun. If we just did this, and that'd be that silver bullets. But they're
we're going to 10x a company in 90 days, and
I reckon what makes it hard for Kiwi business owners and just all of us in New Zealand is we have that jack of all trades. So you should know how to reverse a trailer. You should know how to drive a boat. You should know how to fix all of that stuff. You should be able to fix your own shit in your house. You're not a fucking man unless you can fix your own roof. And you're like, oh, okay. And so we grow up like thinking we need to know all this stuff.
And it flows into business.
Spot
on.
Yeah.
And then you realize, like, is it a good idea for you guys to be fixing a hole in the wall in your business, for instance? Like, you might know how to do it, but no, you have to. It's so counterintuitive because and then if you don't do it, so if you swap money for time, people say to you, you got too much money, you must have too much money. And you grow up hearing that in New Zealand as well. And we moved floors in our office from level 2 to level 4, paid movers to do it so that we could stay at home and keep working.
Get podcasts out.
And people were like, that's mad. Like, why don't you guys just do it? It's just 2 floors. Get it done. And then the contractors, they smash one of the screens, so then we're down for another 2K to fix that as well. But
gotcha.
It's a bit, but it's smart. And one that we've talked about, like a metaphor as well, is we look at, you look at someone like Roger Federer. The analogy we use is Roger Federer is paid to hit tennis balls. He makes his money hitting tennis balls. So he shows up, he's not making his lunch. He's not stringing his rackets, he's showing up. All that's done so that, because where he's adding value is when he's hitting balls. If he's not hitting balls, he's not at his maximum value. So I think there's an important lesson in there in business as you scale, is work out what is it that you do that is actually adding the most value to the business. What's your $1,000 an hour activity? And if there's another one that you can get someone to do for $8 an hour, get someone else on it.
And they might doing it too.
Yeah, that's a really good call as well. Like, even like early days, putting together like a sales proposal or something like that. Like, we just put the content in like a word file. Neither of us are experts, and Jack's like, sweet, like, assume that your time's worth $1,000 an hour. Do you want to do it yourself, or can we just find somebody at Upwork for, who's a graphic designer who's going to do a way better job anyway, and that just allows you to focus on the next call and things like that. So we've tried to have like a lot of rigor around, even just for ourselves. It's like, are there ways that we can kind of cut out the noise and just focus on the core things? It's been interesting.
I think as well, what happens the more you say no, you actually have to get better at it, because people aren't used to hearing it too. So they're almost like, what, I was talking to a potential client recently. I was like, oh, this just isn't our, and they're like, well, what is your thing? Well, what do you mean? Well, we are established. And you're like, oh, holy shit.
Creates a social magnetism. You pull away, they come forward, eh?
Well, I don't know how to say this nicely, but we can't be your accountant. It's like, well, like, what do you mean? They want to know all of the info. I'm just thinking, I just need to go for this course so I can get back to doing some work. But I think what you said before as well, if you can still be helpful rather than helping. So here's who you can go and speak to.
You can talk to.
They'll be better at it, and then you get better at saying no too, because you realize that you're not just like, we're not doing this, and then what the hell? What do you mean? You're saying, well, here's why, or here's who you can go speak to. They do this. They're better at that than us. I think my thoughts to add to that would be focus on what you're good at. So as I learned to do more of my own strengths and then not do the stuff that I'm not good at, I found it more enjoyable, and then it was easier to say no to the things that you didn't enjoy, because you know how much they drain you and how much you actually dislike doing it. And then you end up in a battle with yourself going, I know I shouldn't say yes to this, but if I do, it's on me, and it's going to take an impact on the other things that I'm trying to do over here. And then you realize, okay, it's actually more about yourself than trying to please everybody.
Such a good point. I agree.
All right, let's move us to number 4.
Good call.
The golden rule. What is the golden rule? This one's going to be controversial too, I reckon.
Yeah, good.
In New Zealand, this is controversial.
This is controversial stuff. Yeah, so the 4th one, I'm happy to take a stab at this here, and then you can clean up behind. We put here the golden rule: make money. So there is, we put a small caveat on that at the start when you're going into it. I think it's really important to decide am I doing this to make money? Because, and so the first decision is this a business? Okay. If you really want to do something, you can still do it. So if you really want to create a system that connects people in retirement homes with people in the community because you think it's a great thing to do, awesome, amazing, do it. But if you do want this to be a business, because if you're not looking to make money, it's important to understand that at the start, because that will change the way that you progress. You're not going to go and spend 50 grand on that, right? Because you're not going to get that money back. Okay. You're going to have to find a lean way or get some funding. Okay. If you want it to make money, it's really important to decide at the start, okay, this is a business. Okay. And then once you've made that decision, I think, and we're big believers that it's critical to then determine how. Okay, so yes, you've got a lot of people have got a lot of great, the business idea might be fantastic, but if it doesn't actually have a mechanism to generate money, then it's going to be really hard, and there's a really one that we learned through, working with a lot of business over the first couple of years is for a lot of people, the plan is advertising on the site, or those sorts of mechanics or data, hey, I'm going to sell the data to someone or I'm going to add. But it's actually like you can save a huge amount of time by stopping there and going like, if you plan to monetize this to do advertising on the data, it's going to be a long journey because in terms of data, TikTok's got the data. If you look on your TikTok disclaimer about what data it's eye watering. Or if you're talking about advertising, Google's 50 cents per 1,000 people. So you get 10,000 people on your site. You're going to get $5, and 10,000 people is hard to get on a platform. And Google can target anaesthetists who live in Wellington who like windsurfing and have a cat, so they've already got it drilled pretty well down. So those mechanics, like they're not completely off the table, but you need such enormous scale. So it's really good at the start to go, okay, cool. Let's park those for now. How else could this, is this a subscription? Can I sell products on here? But being really clear about if I want this to work, what is going to be that mechanic that generates money? Because getting that right is going to be the key long term. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Our background's bootstrapped as well, so we took on a little bit of investment, but broadly speaking, we actually never had to use it. It was really just like a safety, a rainy day fund. And look, Jack's huge finance background, so he's been super polished on the financials from day one. But one of the things that we found was really good is like, how can we basically create a business which we've ultimately sold for, basically based on sweat equity. Not too many sunk costs up front. And, there are different ways. Like if you want to, start an app that, create an app like that, is in a marketplace for people trying to look for amazing surf spots around New Zealand or something like that. Like you could probably do it with a Facebook group. You could probably do it with a Facebook group and maybe just do some awesome content marketing from yourself as a Facebook administrator to generate a bit of stoke and a bit of hype. And then, if you get critical mass of users, potentially you can, create an app off that. But it's just like finding cool ways to almost start something that de-risks it as well. As I think, a lot of people are like, well, I don't have 100K to spend on my mobile app idea, so I won't do it now. But it's like, man, why don't you start with a Facebook group or a WhatsApp number like Dunzo or something, and just go, let's just hand crank it.
See if you can get a buck. Like it's a really good mental model that I've heard applied for a lot of people from the startups is work out, okay, how can you get $1 in? So don't get obsessed about having a huge amount, but how can you get your first $1 and then work out what is the critical path? So what is the shortest path I can take to get that $1? Okay. And then do nothing else. So nothing else on the side. What is the shortest way? Whether even if it's your auntie or your brother, but you've got to, how can I get $1 for the service or whatever your cost price is, your sell price is rather. But then that keeps you really focused because you're going, okay, well, the goal is to make a business here and you're going to learn so much by just trying to, your customers are going to tell you whether or not they've got value from that.
Yeah. Nice. I think with where we are in the economic cycle, where we're back to house prices falling, interest rates are higher. The convo around, because mate, let's go back 4 years ago. If you were rolling around saying, hey, golden rule, you got to make money, people are like, oh, fuck, it's always about the money. Oh, what about my care project? All of that stuff gets quiet in an economic contraction.
Interesting.
And it's interesting, like some of those people as well, you kind of think, well, what are you doing on your weekends? Why aren't you volunteering about the thing you care about so much? It was easy to do those things when interest rates were 1% or there was heaps of money in a frothy environment. Oh, I'm going to do this startup and we're going to do this and we're going to solve all these problems. Hey, it's tough economic. How much do you care about it? Where are you going? So I think it's a good business rule of, okay, is this actually going to make money? Because eventually, you can't hire people, you can't
Nah,
pay
yeah,
suppliers and
spot
stuff.
on.
And you might be really passionate about something, but as soon as you do then go to the next level and you go, right, I want to hire this venue so I can have 100,000 people that can come and listen about sustainability or whatever.
Yeah.
Most of the time they'll say, great, venue charges $3,000.
Yeah.
Unless you've added enough value to them and you go, oh, hang on, like this is a passion project. It's all about sustainability. What are you doing? They'll go, oh, well, we can't, our staff aren't going to come here and serve everyone for free. You need to pay.
Yeah.
So
spot on.
I think in the bubble of the economy, there was probably too much of the unrealisticness of how business actually works.
Bit of overinvestment, things like that.
Yeah. And now we're like balancing it back out of, okay, hey, it's okay to make a bit of money. And you notice as well, a lot of people are now complaining that their houses aren't worth what they were, or they're not making the money in the stock market and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people are focused on it. I think we wanted to hide from it that it's okay to say, look, we need to make some cash doing this.
Yeah, and it's a good goal, and I mean, and it's fun. Like I think as well, what we're big believers in is it's quite a cool thing to make a business that works, to make a business profitable. So it's a great challenge. You achieve a lot. You work with a lot of cool people on the way, and there's actually nothing wrong with making a buck.
Well, you guys reached out and actually sponsored a couple of Keep the Change episodes.
We did.
You can't do that if you're not making any money.
No, it was a great privilege.
So thanks for that.
No, likewise.
Yeah.
I'll tie those two together for you. So what we now do with Next Advisor is we very seldom take on a business who's just getting started.
Yep.
Especially if it's an idea where I can tell in an email to us, I'm like, oh shit, they're building a platform, or they are doing this big thing, and it's basically tying 3 and 4 together. So the focus for us, like in year one, I'd be like, right, we're on the phone. We can help you.
You're taking
set your zero up. Let's get you the company.
That sounds familiar, doesn't it?
And then it's like, oh no, that's because I know there's 64,000 questions. They're gonna need to know like all of this stuff, and also they haven't proven yet that they can make money. Sure, they might go on to make money, but until they're making money, an accounting purchase often is a bit of a grudge too.
Like that.
Then they have all the questions like, hey, what's this fee for? It's like, that's what we talked about last month when you signed the engagement letter. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so it almost is basically for us like focus. They don't need to be ideal clients anymore, and that's okay. But that's saying no.
That's saying no for sure.
And the people that are taking that lean, smart approach, we had a really similar rule of thumb. We used to have a saying. For us, it was an NDA. So we say if someone with an NDA and no product is dangerous, avoid. So it's the same thing, because it's a really good indicator that the person that you're working with doesn't understand the amount of steps it's going to take to actually get that to market. It's different when it's an established business and they've got IP to protect. Absolutely, we sign NDAs every day. But when it's someone that's just thought of an idea in the shower and they want you to close it, we say it's okay, mate.
My favorite one was I got a call from an unknown number and they wanted accounting help, and but I needed to sign an NDA for them to tell me what the business was. It hasn't even started yet, and I'm thinking. So when I saw that in your guys' notes about how they're dangerous,
it's a classic one.
But also, even just taking a step back from that, there'll be a lot of people that do think you can't share your ideas because someone's going to steal it and all that sort of stuff. And I think
it goes back to the no idea.
It's the opposite. The opposite's true, I think.
It kind of goes back to the no idea is a good idea. You know what I mean? It's like the idea itself is worth nothing. You know what I mean? You don't really have that much protection. It's
tell everyone.
It's 99% execution, and even then, it's probably 99.9. It's execution. It's your marketing funnel. It's how you convert those metrics into sales. It's your sales scripts. It's it's all of it combined, which makes the business great. Yeah, ideas themselves are.
They've done
a lot of people think an NDA is important.
You just got to get started. Yeah.
Well, that leads us in nicely to number 5, which is the fact that it's mostly a mental game. So we talk a lot about execution, but we have to get our minds right and get the mental side of it right so that we can execute more right. So how would you guys, explain to people that it's mostly a mental game? Because I think a lot of people hear that and go, surely not. Yeah. Surely not. But now, I don't know if you guys have noticed this too, but now, deeper into your business journey, when you watch a documentary and it's a sprinter and they basically get to the start line, they're like, now it's the mental game. And you're like, oh yeah, it's and you spot it a lot more of people saying, okay, it is a mental game, or rugby players, etc.
It's all in your head. Do you want to have a swing at this then, and I can?
Yeah, this one probably to me is like the most foundational. I think everything like the other point's like really important when you are kind of running in a business, but I think mindset is like what definitely helped me personally kind of I guess growing up in my 20s, things like that, like I was probably a little bit of a late bloomer to the kind of career thing. I wasn't really 100% sure of what I wanted to do. Then I kind of landed that job with the fintech I was telling you about, and I was just like, I'm a little bit behind the 8 ball. I'm going to work for free. I'm going to take a pay loss. I'm going to work weekends. I'm going to make up for that lost time. It's like, and I'm just going to go aggro. And it was like a really, really interesting thing, because after about, 6 to 8 months, like I sort of felt like, okay, I actually don't mind just like trying and doing hard things now. And that was actually like a bit of a reward in a wee while, once you start doing it for a wee while. But I guess like for me, the biggest thing about the mindset thing is probably just realizing that, like, if you do decide I'm going to go into business, I want to start something for myself, I want to grow it, I want to scale it, potentially sell it, it's like, fantastic. What are you removing out of your life? Again, it kind of comes back to like the saying no thing, but like sacrifice, like what is it that you're able to sacrifice to make that dream come true? And I talked with Jack, like when I first decided to come on as a co-founder, it's like, I know my social life's probably going to take a nosedive. I'm probably not going to be as like physically fit, probably go to the gym less, like, but we kind of just like brought it out of the dark and put it on the table and was like, for this season of my life, like I'm going to do a bunch of sacrifice and commit to this goal.
Yeah. Nice.
And Jack was like, sweet, this is what I'm doing. And we both were like, okay, fine. When it did eventually happen, a couple of years there, it was pretty quiet on the social front. Like what you kind of realize is like, because you sort of address it and bring it out of the light to begin with, which I think is a really good mechanic. It's like, write down all the stuff that you're scared is going to happen if you try and start a business, write it down and kind of create like a bit of almost like a fears list. When it actually does eventuate and you maybe are like, a little bit kind of socially deprived, like you're so okay with it because you kind of knew that was part of like the emotional contract you sign when you go in. I don't know. I mean, that's kind of that was on the top of my head.
I think it's spot on. I think that's one thing that I've really enjoyed about working with Henry is we've always been open that part of this game is mental. So we use a term above the line and below the line. So we're just open with each other. We'll come into work and we'll go, hey man, that 10 a.m. meeting, I'm actually a bit below the line this morning. Didn't sleep much last night. I'm finished about sweet. Let's move it to Friday. Because you're just totally cognizant and open to the fact that you make your best decisions when you're sharp. But you're not always sharp. You're gonna have good days and bad days. And I think recognizing that it's gonna be hard is really important as well. That it's not going to be, it's not always going to be smooth and easy.
And it was tricky.
It has been tricky, and I think to Henry's point, like, we talked about listing out the worries. I think that's a really powerful unlock for people. So like, if you're thinking about having a crack at something against something to go, often what holds us back is that fear of failure. It's so ingrained. But if you can actually list out, and I've found this really useful for me, like list out in excruciating detail. So, like, I'm, and say, so if you think about doing a business, I'm worried that if this business fails, my dad's mate, Paul, who already thinks I'm a dropkick, is now going to have proof that I'm a dropkick, whatever it is. So, and normally it'll always come down, when we're worried about failure, normally it's always going to come down to what people are going to think or external things, right? Because if you fail something in a dark hole, no one cares, right?
Yeah.
And by the time you've listed it out, it then gives you a really powerful option to be able to go, well, that's cool, but am I okay with my dad's mate, Paul, determining my next step here? And often you'll go, oh shit, what am I doing? Like, I don't care about that. Okay, boom, and you can plow forward. So I think that point you made, Henry, is really important. Is actually try to deeply understand and stare in the face of what you actually wrote about.
Yeah.
This is random, but I reckon write that list, and then instead of investing $3,000 into the business, take the first 300, take that list to a counsellor and say, hey, I'm thinking about completely changing my life.
Yeah.
Great call.
And these are the things holding me back. Can you help me unpack this over the next hour? And go, here's my list. And they will help you unpack, like, okay, here's why you're worried about your uncle's mate Paul thinking you're a failure.
Yeah.
And that'll probably be the best three. I mean, I didn't do that, but I've kind of done some of that stuff on my journey. So now
you can do it at any stage. Yeah.
I just notice a lot where people are spending money on shit. And I think, why are you spending on that? You could spend it on going and getting the actual answer from a counsellor or unpacking it.
Cool.
And then that's such a great investment, that $300.
You get about 10x, 20x.
Yeah, but 100%. I think with mindset and stuff, especially business, you go on the path and then you realize, okay, this is a mindset game. And then you go back to the start and try and unpack and figure some of those things out instead of going, maybe I'll do it from the start. Maybe sit down with a counsellor from the start and go, here's my issues, my things I'm worried about.
Here's the stuff that's going to produce a lot of cortisol for me.
And the cortisol, like Henry and I were laughing this morning, we're talking like there's been times when I've been so stressed that I can taste cortisol. So I've told my wife, Casey, like, you know, that I can actually taste in my mouth. There's so much that I don't know how many milligrams it is, but it can't be healthy. But, you know, especially when you're doing offshore IT, shit goes wrong, you know. So that's part and parcel. But I think as well, to finding ways to metabolize it has been a huge unlock and a huge happen. It's different for everyone. But like, you know, for me, it's like, and all this will sound, you know, some pretty voodoo, but like for me, it's dark showers. So I'll go home after a big day. Sometimes you work late, you're trying to get a proposal out. You're a bit wired. I'll just go in the bathroom, close the blinds, warm shower, completely pitch black, just reset the senses, and just even just those little 5-10 minute circuit breakers, whatever it is for you, can just be enough to reset and get you through the week. And so for little hacks like that, I think are massive. Finding what works.
Yeah.
100%.
I mean, mine's always kind of been exercise or outdoors. Like getting outdoors is so good. Yeah. You know, just keeps you balanced during the meantime. But it was one thing I found, like, actually I thought that you swept out really well in that episode I think you did on how to think and keep the change. Like a lot of that resonated, you know. I think it's an interesting journey. It is quite complex, but it's the mental game is kind of the precursor to everything else.
Boiling
unfolding.
it right back to the start.
Yeah. And sometimes what worked for me, I mean, obviously, like depending on the audience and who's listening, like another thing is like if starting a business is kind of almost just like a little bit beyond reach for you and where you're at now, like another option is to kind of do what I did as well and like actually just like go and work for a startup, you know, like maybe take a 5-10K haircut on salary if you know, if you can, but just go join a business where you're elbow to elbow with a CEO or a founder. The conversations just hit a bit different. You can pick up on the way that they think, the way that they talk day to day. Is just like how to position value. You learn a lot from that experience. That like in state, it was kind of where I was able to kind of get to through being through those kind of early stage companies and just being you know, side by side. You can just pick up a lot, and I think that mindset from them just gets picked up by osmosis. You know what I mean? It's sort of like you're the collection of
people, the average of 5 people.
It's like just go be in another room for a bit, see if that changes things.
And you get some realities of the conversations that happen, and then they feel more familiar when you end up having them yourselves, right?
That's right.
That's exactly right.
You start seeing the same patterns that you just watched another guy or girl interface with a couple of years ago when you're working for a startup or whatever.
Well, lads, this has been a great deep dive into your journey and then some lessons. Before we go, have you boys got or heard of these Oura rings?
I've heard of them. Yeah,
they're
honestly, good.
Yeah, I feel like you two lads would get a lot out of it. And just what you were talking about before of the above the line, below the line, or just not feeling quite there. So as an example, for instance, I went out to 1:30 after the All Blacks and had some beers and some White Russians and shit.
Yeah, and the data told you.
3.5 hours sleep. Yeah, I'm up to watch the Euro final, and then I realised Sunday morning, actually it's on Monday. So then I'm like awake for the rest of the day. But my Oura ring is basically like, mate, you're a piece of shit. My readiness is like 40 out of 100. And so I know on that day, but I mean, you could say, well, who wouldn't know that? But I've got like no creativity. My thoughts they're not for me, they're against me, and it's just dangerous. But actually having the data to know, okay,
I'm below the line.
Compared to today, so we're Thursday now, and it takes you a couple of days to come right from like you've completely ruined your sleep cycle, the beers, etc. Today I'm at a 91, and I knew before I looked at the data, I was like, shit, I feel pretty good today.
Great.
And I thought, and when I know that I'm a 90, that might be 10% of the days. So on those days, I know I can tackle massive projects. I can take any problem that comes at me. I can probably write 3 money mails in half an hour. They'll be my best days to do podcasts, etc.
Wild.
Yeah. So I think for
pick and choose your battles.
For guys like you, with like the more you're going to do in life to spend $600 or maybe even a bit more, the info you'll get from it, and then being able to tie a little bit of your own intuition to the data, it'll just pay itself back.
Good call.
I can
massive plug for them.
I was going to say, I was like, sponsored.
So that's sales now.
Send them an invoice.
I was going to say, like, is it getting pretty intuitive now that like you look at your Oura ring, you look at your kind of your body battery or whatever it's, and then you're kind of like, yep, that's exactly how I feel. Like, is it pretty accurate most days?
Yeah, I've had it for a number of years now, so I'm quite in tune with it. But I don't let it determine. So sometimes I don't feel like I am flying. Well, probably the other way around. I feel better, and then the data's like, actually you're not.
50.
But I don't let it be like, oh, okay, well that means I'm not going to do this today or whatnot. But I know when I am really sharp, I can do a lot more than I normally would today.
Well, cool. That's actually really interesting. I mean, that's again another like sort of thing Jack introduced to me when we started fairly early on. He was just like, it's just compounding growth. Even at you're at 50%, just do whatever you can do at 50%, because showing up and doing 0.5% is better than doing no %. You know, even if you're not
Just
at
get an
full
email
one,
out.
get a couple of emails out. Just just pay yourself a favor for the day after, where you know you're not looking at like a huge to-do list. You know, just do the basics or the urgents, and then have a snooze if you're sick or whatever. But
tick some tasks off and get some wins.
Yeah, that's right. And you
that's
can't
it.
sprint, and that's you know, I think as well. Credit to him. What I think, you know, you do well is picking. You know, you can't sprint all the time.
No.
You know, and even like a really great analogy that we've talked about a bit, that we picked up somewhere along the way is you know, and you watch those bike races, Tour de France and stuff. The people that win aren't going the fastest the whole time. It's about their ability to identify when you need a sprint, and then when you need a sprint, they can sprint.
And the peloton,
you know,
as
so
well.
it's those short bursts and working out. You know, you've still got to be fit, you've still got to get around, but knowing how to sprint and when, and identifying, okay, now's time. We've just got to pull a couple of big days, and get it done.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, Jack and Henry from Double Yoke, congrats, boys, on the successful exit, which has then turned into an acquisition effectively into the next chapter. So I'm sure you'll be able to come back and update us. But we are going to do a part 2, because you're going to take us through 10 ideas that you've got for other people. You're going to give them away. They don't have to sign an NDA.
No, they can go and do them.
Awesome. If people do want to keep an eye on you guys, so they don't go and then listen to the 10 ideas, where can they find you, or how do they reach out to you if need be?
Probably LinkedIn. Are you on social media? I'm not.
I'm on LinkedIn. Yeah.
You're on LinkedIn
it's
as well.
Henry Wallace or Jack Coleman, and we're more than happy to jump in and help people that are you know, having a swing at any stage. And I think as well from Henry and I, Luke, you know, back to yourself, mate, is a massive thanks. And you know, we're a bit starstruck here, because we've been listening to your stuff, but it has been tremendously valuable for us along the journey. And yeah, massive credit and respect for what you've been able to achieve. So yeah, stoked to be here, mate.
Yeah, cheers.
Bang on.
Awesome. No, bloody honour to have you sitting across from me telling the story, and you leaving footsteps and planting seeds for other people to know that there's a different way that we can do things here in New Zealand. I think we need more stories of that, you know, rather than just people having the blinkers on to what their parents might have done, or what their guidance counsellor told them to do, etc. And know that you can come into an industry, find an opportunity, scale it internationally to the point where someone looks across the ditch and goes, hey guys, we'd be pretty keen to buy buy a chunk of that. Well done. Reward you for all the hard work. All right. Well, part 2, we'll be back soon with the 10 business ideas that people can choose from. So we'll see everybody on that episode.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Luke.